Hey, welcome back into Occupy Democrats on a tricky Trump Tuesday. Oh yes, we've got major breaking news, and it isn't just about the Epstein files, because there's about to be a big gathering on Capitol Hill, but that begs the question in this breaking story. Not only was it going to mean for Donald Trump, what's it going to mean for J.D. Vance? Because how this goes and how what happens with the Epstein files is going to say a lot about 2028. And it's a very fragile time going on right now because, if you don't know, listen to what Trump just said when Tucker Carlson interviewed very, very racist white nationalist Nick Fuentes.
Trump has also weighed in on another Republican feud, whether it was wrong or in any way inappropriate or politically tone deaf for Tucker Carlson to interview white nationalist Nick Fuentes. Here was the president on that topic.
We've had some great interviews with Tucker Carlson, but you can't tell him who to interview. I mean, if he wants to interview Nick Fuentes, I don't know much about him, but if he wants to do it, get the word out. Let him, people have to decide. Ultimately, people have to decide.
And let us not forget that underneath the core, Trump loves revenge and he hates being betrayed. And underneath all this political BS is a lot of what J.D. Vance said early on about Donald Trump.
And so one of the takeaways is not just that the Republican Party base is somehow fundamentally flawed in a way that's unique in American political history. It's that Trump is a really bad candidate and, frankly, I think a really bad person.
And even as recent, let's bear in mind, even as recent as February, Super Bowl, Donald Trump made this comment to Bret Baier about J.D. Vance being his successor.
Welcome back. Fact, it is way too early to talk about the 2028 presidential campaign. However, President Trump kind of peeled back some of his thinking in the Fox Super Bowl interview when asked about his vice president, J.D. Vance's political future. Listen.
Do you view Vice President J.D. Vance as your successor, the Republican nominee in 2028?
No, but he's very capable. I mean, I don't think that I think you have a lot of very capable people. So far, I think he's doing a fantastic job. It's too early.
And we all know, because Trump is notorious for having said, as opposed to other presidents, well, the buck stops in a lot of places. He doesn't take responsibility for anything. So when you have one of his boys, Tucker Carlson, kind of buddying up and giving a free platform to someone like Nick Fuentes, and J.D. Vance is pals with Tucker Carlson, and Trump won't commit to really giving J.D. the mantle because he doesn't want to give it to anybody. You have this breaking story, which is, kind of stabbed him in the back. Check this story out. Breaking news. Trump shivved Vance in the back, and the VP is now scrambling for allies, report. A casualty of the MAGA civil war that has erupted over neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes and former Fox News fixture Tucker Carlson is an unlikely victim, Vice President J.D. Vance, who has been shivved by President Donald Trump, according to Greg Sargent on the New Republic Daily Blast podcast. Sargent says that as Vance has his eyes on taking the reins of MAGA in a post-Trump world, and poll numbers point to the Veep as the likely heir, it's not a lock, and the president may not be helping him secure that lock either. In quotes, it occurs to me that Trump really, whether intentionally or not, shivved Vance in the back in a way here, Sargent says. So Vance has an Indian-American wife, right? He's going to want a free hand to do this anti-immigrant appeals while also presenting himself as non-bigoted. Vance, Sargent said, has to straddle a very difficult line. In quotes, Vance wants to get away with what you might call a soft or veiled white nationalism, he says, adding that Fuentes actually mocks Vance and makes racist comments about his wife. He makes the white nationalism extremely explicit. Sargent says he believes, in quotes, Vance would have preferred it if Trump sidelined Fuentes, but Trump basically dumped Fuentes on Vance to have to deal with later. Vox's Zach Beauchamp says that Trump hasn't been that interested in his succession. In quotes, I've got a personal theory that Trump has mostly checked out of the succession fight at this particular moment in time. There's a lot going on with him, a lot of things to wrangle, he says. And the question of how to deal with someone like Nick Fuentes is just not at the top of his agenda. He's just answering it in the way that he would any other question. I don't know him. I'm not involved in this. I don't know. Tucker's business is Tucker's business, he adds. Fuentes aside, Beauchamp says that Trump's apparent disinterest in his succession puts Vance in a precarious place. In quotes, that abdication, though, does put Vance in a position because he wants to, as you say, it's very clear, be the Republican standard bearer in 2028. He wants to create a sort of very ideological version of MAGA. But Vance, Beauchamp says, is trying to turn it into a disciplined ideological cadre. But then you have to answer the questions, right? Questions. If you really stand for something, what do you do about this guy who's gaining popularity? Question mark. Who hates you, right? Who will demean you in the grossest of possible terms, and your family, and you're supposed to have honor, and you're supposed to stand there and say, look, I can be a leader, and you're going to let this guy take pot shots and be a platform by your friend like Carlson? Vance has a connection to Carlson, he adds, saying, in quotes, and Vance and Carlson are friends, but like Carlson pushed very hard to get Vance nominated and was reportedly instrumental in securing that role. The friendship, Beauchamp says, makes Vance's role in this MAGA civil war awkward. In quotes, Vance doesn't want to condemn Tucker because he sees him as an essential ally going forward for the nomination, he says. And if he goes too hard on Fuentes, that can be seen as going after Carlson. So he's stuck. Beauchamp says if he could, Vance would probably like to kick Fuentes out of the coalition, and the Veep's silence is de facto an endorsement of what Tucker is doing. And that's where he's stuck at the moment, and that's bad for him. That's not where he wants to be in a world where he's trying to sort of consolidate across the conservative movement core support ahead of people who are going to try and outflank him on the we don't like Nazi side, which is still popular even among some mainstream conservatives who have magnified themselves, Beauchamp says. For now, Vance is, in quotes, trying to ride it out, Beauchamp says. Vance is in a position where his own allies are at risk if he shoots at Fuentes. So my guess is he's going to want to take that shot, but wants to do it at a better time. Not right now, because right now, in doing so, he'd be stabbing people who he's close to personally and who he needs politically in the back, he adds. And what is all of that going to mean in the end? Well, first and foremost, if you're like me, J.D. Vance has no chance of being elected as Donald Trump's successor. But more than that, it's only 10 months, 10 and a half months, not even quite 11, into Trump's presidency. And what is going to happen in the next 2 to 4 months, I think, will tell you everything about their relationship, because there are some serious rocky roads ahead. And I can picture a little Trump-Elon Musk scenario occurring between JD and Trump based on not only Carlson and Nick Fuentes, but on many other things. You guys like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay frosty.